welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Gemma here. I wanted to talk a little bit today about parenting when you have OCD, one of my favourite topics, and just about being cautious about putting your irrational beliefs onto your children. Now, the reason I say that you should be cautious about this, not that you should, but it would be preferable if you were cautious about that, is because as parents with OCD, we are more likely to have children with OCD. Now, whether that be because it's hereditary, whether that be because they grow up watching us and see the things that we're scared of, and that makes them feel like they're going to be scared of those things themselves. I'm not sure on the exact research on it, but it does seem that we work with a lot of people who have family members with OCD, who have children with OCD, who have parents with OCD, and it does seem to run in families. So it's really, really important when you're around your children that you're doing your best to face your fears and not show the difficulty that you're finding in these things, because and understandably, children see us and they respond to the things that we respond to. So if you're constantly avoiding things, if you're saying, oh no, we can't do that because of this reason, let's say, oh, we can't go to the park, it's really busy, or things like that, they're going to pick up on that, and they're going to wonder what's the problem with going when it's busy, everyone, and they're going to develop a fear themselves around certain things. And that's not to scare anyone, that's not to say you're gonna ruin your child's life if you're not behaving in a certain way, because no one's perfect. We could all look back at our childhoods and think of things that we wish our parents had done differently, in the same way that maybe our children will look back at theirs and think, oh, I wish I wasn't so fearful because of the way that my parent behaved. It's not a necessity for this to happen. It's not a necessity for them to grow up feeling secure and not afraid of things. They can live perfectly happy lives if they do grow up feeling afraid of things. But as parents, it's good for us to give them the best chance possible and not put our fears onto them by avoiding things, by doing compulsions. So if they see us, every time we drop them off at school, we say, oh, let's say for instance, all the other kids are kind of dropped off and walking on their own. They go, no, I have to walk you to the door. I have to make sure you're okay. We're then going to make them feel like maybe there is something to be concerned about, and that in turn is probably going to make them feel like there's something scary. So we really do have to do our best to allow them to do things and allow them a little bit of freedom, and that's super, super hard when you have OCD. Things like sleepovers can be really hard. Sleepovers is something I struggled with massively, and to be honest, I'm still not a massive fan of them now. I don't particularly like, especially if I don't really know the parents, I don't particularly like my daughter staying at other people's houses. I will let her if it's her closer friends, but it's not something I'm over the moon about, and that's fine. You can still have your preferences, but it's, what's the reason that I'm wanting to stop them? Well, for me, it would be, I thought, someone might hurt her, and is that rational to just assume that that's going to happen? Probably not. So you do really have to check yourself sometimes and make sure you're not stopping them from experiencing certain things because of your fears. When my daughter went on a residential, I found that so difficult. I was probably doing quite a lot of compulsions at that point. I was constantly checking the school website where they were updating like pictures of the kids out at the residential and things. And I was checking it every hour or so to see if there'd been more pictures, and then when there were pictures, I would zoom in on her and like, does she look okay? Does she look happy? Does she look like anything's upset her? You can't tell any of that from a picture. Like, she could just be pulling a face at the time. But in my mind, it was like, as long as I keep checking, then she's okay. But again, that's a false illusion of safety, because maybe something had happened and maybe she was having a bad time, but maybe someone had just made her laugh before the picture, so I'm going, oh, it's okay, she looks happy, I can see her smiling. That doesn't necessarily mean that she's happy. That just means that she was smiling in that picture at that time. But I was doing that because I could then reassure myself and be like, well, if she looks relatively happy, then, you know, she must be absolutely fine. So it was that false illusion of safety. And it's always a false illusion of safety, because there's no guarantees, there's no certainty. And as people with OCD, all we want is certainty, but that's not something that we can have. We can't strive for certainty. We have to strive for being okay with not being certain, because that's the only thing that we can do. Nothing in life is certain. You know, you can feel like, oh, it's okay, they're at home, they're safe, they're with me. They could have an accident at home, something could happen to them at home, someone could break into your house at home. Again, not saying this to scare anyone, but wrapping them up in cotton wool and not letting them experience anything out of, you know, but what if something happens to them? Things can happen to them at any time. Children get poorly, children have, you know, random accidents happen. Anything can happen at any time. So holding them back from doing things, it's the same as ourselves. Holding ourselves back from doing anything is out of the fear of something happening. You know, I don't want to go on holiday, I don't want to go on a flight because it might crash, I don't want to drive somewhere that's like a long distance because something might happen in the car, I don't want to go out late at night because, you know, someone might attack me. All of these things that we stop ourselves from doing, it's like, yeah, well, you could spend your entire life doing that. You could spend your entire life not experiencing anything, and then while you're sat at home in your safety place, you could have a brain aneurysm and drop dead. And what was all that for? What was all the avoiding doing things at that point for? Because the thing that you feared would happen, you dying or you becoming severely ill or just something really bad that would mess up life happening, can happen at any point. So you may as well be experiencing life and finding those moments of enjoyment than, you know, playing it safe and then getting to the end of your life and just thinking, I didn't do anything. Like I did nothing. I stayed at home all the time because I was too scared to walk outside. I just ended up living a very boring and mundane life, and, you know, my worst case scenario, something happening to me, happened anyway, but I didn't get to experience anything before that happened. It was just boredom and then death. So it's really, really important, not only for our children and ourselves, but just for our well-being in general, that we're always pushing ourselves into doing these things, because without that we become stagnant. We just lose motivation and don't rely on motivation. That's another topic, but that's not to say, oh, you know, once I've lost motivation, all is lost. You know, that is when discipline comes in. If there's no motivation, there needs to be discipline, because you have to push yourself. Otherwise you are just going to live the life that you're living now. And I imagine if you're here and you're watching these videos, that you're not living the life that you want to be living right now. So it's really, really important that you do push yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. If you've got any ideas of topics that you want me to cover, just pop a comment below, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.